Before Rocky Balboa became the ultimate underdog hero, Rocky was just a scrappy little script written by a broke actor with a bulldog by his side. Nobody believed in it. Hollywood laughed at it, yet somehow, against every odds stacked against it, this $1 million underdog movie knocked out giants, redefined sports films, and turned Sylvester Stallone into a household name. But the real story? It's even crazier than the movie itself. From hospital trips to stolen dogs, here are 20 weird facts about Rocky you never knew. Number 1. Stallone refused to sell his script unless he starred in it. Here's the chaos that almost killed Rocky before it was born. Sylvester Stallone had written the script, but he was dirt poor. So poor he had to sell his dog just to eat. Studios loved his story, but only if they could cast a real star. They offered Stallone over $300,000 to hand over the script and walk away. For a guy who had barely $100 to his name, it should have been a no-brainer. But Stallone did the unthinkable. He flat out refused unless he played Rocky himself. Everyone told him he was insane, that he'd blown his one shot at Hollywood. But Stallone held his ground. And that stubborn gamble? It didn't just make him a star. It created an immortal underdog legend. Number 2. Rocky nearly got recast with a famous face. Stallone was never supposed to play Rocky. United artists had dollar signs in their eyes and wanted box office titans like Robert Redford, Burt Reynolds, James Caan, even Ryan O'Neal. In their minds, Rocky wasn't a gritty South Philly nobody. He was a polished all-American poster boy. Stallone was told flat out he didn't have the looks, the fame, or the charisma. Imagine Rocky delivering those iconic lines with Redford's golden boy charm instead of Stallone's raw grit. The studio figured audiences wanted a movie star, not an unknown with a crooked smile and slurred speech. But Stallone's stubbornness flipped the script. Instead of Hollywood royalty, audiences got the real deal. A hungry actor with an authenticity that made Rocky punch through the screen and into history. Number 3. The movie nobody wanted to make. When Stallone finally landed the role, the fight wasn't over. The studio still thought Rocky was too small, too dirty, too real. This was the era of Jaws and Star Wars. Audiences were supposed to crave spectacle, not a broke boxer stumbling through the trash-strewn streets of Philadelphia. United artists looked at Stallone's script and saw failure written all over it. To them, it wasn't cinema, it was a gamble on grime. They slashed the budget to a meager $1 million, half of which went straight to salaries and distribution. That left Stallone with almost nothing to shoot with. But that brutal limitation forced the team to get creative, to strip the story to its bare bones. And that rawness, the thing the studio feared most, is what turned Rocky into a cultural knockout. But while the studio worried about budgets and grit, Stallone was finding ways to make every moment count. And sometimes, that meant thinking on his feet or, in this case, swinging his fists. Which brings us to one of the most unexpectedly iconic moments in Rocky history. Number 4. Stallone improvised the meat-punching scene. That unforgettable scene of Rocky pounding frozen sides of beef? It wasn't in the script. Stallone made it up on the spot. During a research trip to a Philly meat plant, he walked past rows of carcasses swaying from hooks and suddenly pictured his underdog boxer taking out his frustration with bare fists. No gloves, no bag, just raw meat and raw pain. The crew let him go at it, and the cameras captured something far more primal than any training montage could script. Every thud of fist on flesh became a metaphor, a fight against circumstance, poverty, and obscurity. Number 5. Stallone kept changing the words. Rocky Balboa isn't polished. He isn't quick-witted. He isn't supposed to be. And that wasn't just Stallone's acting, it was constant rewriting. On set, Stallone would throw out pages of dialogue, swapping them for halting sentences, clumsy phrasing, awkward silences. Why? Because Rocky wasn't a poet. He was a man who fought with his fists, not his tongue. The pet shop scene is the perfect snapshot. Rocky stumbles over every word, circling Adrienne with broken sentences that feel more real than any Hollywood scriptwriter could dream up. Stallone knew audiences would feel the humanity in those imperfections. He wasn't chasing perfect dialogue, he was chasing honesty. And that gamble paid off. Number 6. They stole Philly, those bustling Philly streets you see in Rocky. Most of it was stolen. Not in the criminal sense, but in the filmmaking sense. The production was broke, so instead of expensive permits, they just rolled cameras and hoped no one noticed. When Rocky jogs through the Italian market, those pedestrians aren't extras. They're real Philadelphians, caught off guard by a sweaty Stallone sprinting past. Some of them smile, some stare, some keep shopping. It's raw, unfiltered, and absolutely authentic. Stallone later admitted they simply couldn't afford permits, so the city itself became an unwitting co-star. So what you're watching is Philly, alive and unscripted, and that's part of why Rocky feels so real, because in many ways, it literally was. Number 7. Stallone nearly died for Rocky. When Stallone promised realism, he meant it. During the fight scenes with Carl Weathers, punches weren't just faked. Some of them actually landed. Stallone wanted the blows to look authentic, and he pushed Weathers to really let loose. That decision nearly cost him everything. After one brutal sequence, Stallone's chest collapsed under the impact of Weathers' punches. He was rushed to the hospital with a swollen heart, spending several days in intensive care. Doctors warned him how dangerous it was, one more shot like that, and it could have killed him. But instead of pulling back, Stallone doubled down, telling the crew, "If it doesn't hurt, it doesn't look real." The result? A fight so raw and believable it burned into movie history and almost broke the man who created it. Stallone nearly risked his life in the ring, but the next part of the story isn't about punches at all, because on the next fact, you'll meet the one furry co-star who stole the show without throwing a single punch. Number 8. Stallone's dog Butkus was his real pet. Butkus, the big mastiff padding alongside Rocky in the film, wasn't some trained Hollywood animal. He was Stallone's actual dog. In the years before Rocky, Stallone was struggling so badly that he couldn't even afford food for himself and Butkus. At one point, he sold the dog for $40 outside a liquor store just to get by. When the Rocky script finally sold, Stallone tracked down the buyer and bought Butkus back, this time for a staggering $15,000. Having Butkus in the movie wasn't just a random addition. For Stallone, it was personal, a little piece of his own story of struggle and survival woven right into the film. Number 9. Carl Weathers mocked Stallone in auditions. When Carl Weathers walked into his audition for Apollo Creed, he didn't exactly play nice. Stallone was sitting in on the readings, and Weathers stumbled over a few lines. Frustrated, he blurted out that he'd probably do better if he had a real actor to work with. That real actor, of course, was Stallone himself, the guy who had not only written the script but was also fighting tooth and nail to play Rocky. Instead of taking offense, Stallone loved it. He thought the arrogance and sharp edge were exactly what Apollo Creed needed. That single moment of trash talk turned into a career-making role for Weathers and gave the movie the perfect foil to Rocky's underdog grit. Number 10. Talia Shire created Adrienne's shyness on the spot. Adrienne wasn't written as the painfully shy, soft-spoken character we see on screen. That was all Talia Shire. During filming, she decided to lean into awkward body language, nervous pauses, and quiet muttering, things that weren't in Stallone's script. For example, the scene in Adrienne's apartment where she fidgets with her glasses and barely makes eye contact, pure improvisation. Stallone later admitted that Shire's choices gave Adrienne real depth, turning her from the girl Rocky likes into the emotional core of the movie. That vulnerability is what makes the ice skating date, and later her transformation into a confident partner, so powerful. Without Shire's instincts, Adrienne might have been forgettable. Instead, she became one of the most human and relatable parts of Rocky. Loving these behind-the-scenes secrets? We're just getting warmed up. If you're into wild movie facts that flip what you thought you knew, make sure to punch that like button. And don't forget to sideswipe subscribe because the next fact is going to shock you. Number 11. Stallone's stunts left him with lasting injuries. Stallone didn't just write and star in Rocky, he literally put his body on the line. With no money for stunt doubles, he insisted on doing nearly every fall, punch, and tumble himself. During training montages, he would slam to the ground or run up those icy Philly steps over and over until the crew got the shot. But the fight scenes were the most brutal. Carl Weathers and Stallone agreed to actually hit each other to make Apollo versus Rocky look authentic. The result? Stallone ended up with cracked ribs, a swollen face, and even permanent nerve damage to his neck and arms that still affects him today. It's the kind of sacrifice that turned Rocky into something raw and believable, but it came at a cost Stallone would carry for life. Number 12. Rocky losing the fight was meant to break every sports movie rule. In 1976, audiences thought they knew the formula. The underdog fights, suffers, then pulls off a miracle win. But Rocky didn't play by those rules. Instead of delivering the classic Hollywood ending, Stallone wrote Rocky to lose the big fight against Apollo Creed. It wasn't about victory in the ring, it was about dignity, survival, and proving to himself that he could go the distance. That decision flipped the entire sports movie genre upside down. Critics expected backlash, but audiences embraced it, cheering not because Rocky won, but because he refused to quit. In many ways, Rocky's loss is what made the film timeless. Winning would have been predictable. Losing, but still standing tall, made him unforgettable. Number 13. Critics dismissed it as too sentimental. When Rocky first hit theaters, not everyone was impressed. While audiences were swept up in the raw emotion of Rocky screaming for Adrienne after going the distance, several critics rolled their eyes. Some dismissed the film as too sentimental, accusing Stallone of leaning too heavily on underdog cliches and melodrama. But what those early detractors missed was exactly what made the movie resonate: the heart. The emotion wasn't sugarcoating, it was the point. The quiet moments, the awkward conversations, and the desperate embrace at the end turned a boxing story into something universal. Over time, the critics' voices faded while the audience's passion endured. What was once seen as sappy is now viewed as the film's greatest strength. Critics might have rolled their eyes at the sentiment, but Rocky's heart wasn't confined to dialogue alone. Because on the next fact, you'll see him taking the streets, running up those Philly steps in a guerrilla-style moment that became one of the most iconic shots in film history. Number 14. The Philly steps scene was shot guerrilla style. The most iconic shot in Rocky. That triumphant run up the Philadelphia Museum of Art steps wasn't some grand, big-budget setup. It was guerrilla filmmaking at its purest. The crew didn't have permits, didn't shut down streets, and certainly didn't have a cheering crowd of extras waiting. Stallone just ran through the city with a cameraman chasing him, hoping nobody stopped them. The simplicity worked in their favor. Real joggers, real onlookers, real Philadelphia gave the moment authenticity no studio could fake. And because there wasn't time for elaborate retakes, the raw energy stayed baked into the scene. That run, shot with almost no resources, ended up becoming one of the most famous images in cinema history, so famous that today, those very steps are nicknamed the Rocky Steps. Number 15. Stallone lost Best Actor to Peter Finch. At the 1977 Academy Awards, Rocky was the underdog that stunned Hollywood, winning Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Editing. But there was one prize Stallone had his eye on: Best Actor. He'd poured himself into Rocky Balboa, even writing the script that launched his career. Yet, when the envelope opened, it wasn't his name. The Oscar went to Peter Finch for Network.
Peter Finch in Network.
A win made historic because Finch had passed away before the ceremony, making him the first actor to ever win posthumously. It was a tough loss for Stallone, but in a way, fitting. Just like Rocky in the ring, he didn't walk away with the title, but he earned respect. And for an actor who had once been broke and homeless, even sitting in that seat as a nominee was already a victory. Number 16, Rocky franchises were claimed to have cheapened the original. Rocky was a one-in-a-million story, a gritty indie film that shocked Hollywood. But Hollywood doesn't stop at one. After the massive success of the first film, sequels came fast. Rocky 2, 3, 4, 5, and eventually Rocky Balboa. Each one had bigger budgets, flashier fights, and more spectacle. And while fans loved seeing Rocky keep getting back in the ring, critics weren't always kind. By the mid-'80s, many argued the sequels had turned a raw underdog story into a formula, more about training montages and showdowns than character and grit. Some even said the later films cheapened the magic of the original. But here's the twist. For audiences, Rocky became more than one movie. He was a symbol. Even if the sequels went over the top, people never stopped rooting for the guy from Philly who refused to quit. The sequels may have amped up the spectacle, but the heart of Rocky's story almost didn't survive at all. Because on the next fact, you'll find out how the studio nearly scrapped Adrienne's love story, the very relationship that made Rocky more than just a fighter. Number 17, studio nearly cut Adrienne's love story. Believe it or not, one of the most important parts of Rocky, the quiet, awkward romance between Rocky and Adrienne, almost didn't make it to the final cut. The studio felt the love story slowed things down. They wanted more fights, more training, more grit. But Stallone fought back, arguing that without Adrienne, the movie wouldn't work. Rocky wasn't just about boxing. It was about a lonely guy who finds someone who believes in him. That's what gave the fight stakes. The famous first kiss scene in Adrienne's apartment? That moment almost never existed. Imagine Rocky without it, just punches and sweat with none of the heart. In the end, Stallone's instincts won out. Adrienne stayed, and her story became the emotional spine of the entire series. Without her, Rocky might have been just another fight movie. Number 18. Adrienne's kiss scene is criticized today as uncomfortable. The first kiss between Rocky and Adrienne is often remembered as tender and vulnerable, but today it's one of the film's most debated moments. In the scene, Rocky corners Adrienne in the apartment, gently insisting she kiss him while she resists, clearly nervous and unsure. Back in 1976, the audience read it as shy romance, the awkwardness of two outsiders finally connecting. But modern viewers sometimes see it differently, pointing out the imbalance of power and the way Adrienne's hesitation feels uncomfortable. It doesn't erase the fact that the film treats their relationship with care, and Talia Shire herself has said she played Adrienne as fearful but willing. Still, the scene is an example of how cultural perspectives shift. What once looked like sweet vulnerability now sparks discussion about consent and how romance is portrayed on screen. Number 19. Muhammad Ali praised Apollo Creed's energy. Apollo Creed's flashy entrance, the top hat, the cape, the showmanship wasn't just movie drama. It was drawn straight from Muhammad Ali's real-life charisma. Ali was the template for Apollo, loud, confident, and impossible to ignore. After Rocky came out, Ali himself reportedly recognized the resemblance and praised Carl Weathers' energy, noting how the performance captured the electric, larger-than-life aura of a true champion. Weathers didn't just play Apollo like a villain, he channeled Ali's playful arrogance, the way he could light up an arena before even throwing a punch. That authenticity helped sell the fight as more than a Hollywood fantasy. For audiences in 1976, Apollo didn't just feel like an opponent. He felt like a real boxer you might have already seen on TV. And if the champ himself gave a nod of approval, you know they got it right. Number 20. Family members were used as extras. When you see the massive Philly crowds cheering Rocky's name, You'd think the production hired an army of extras. In reality, Rocky's budget couldn't afford that. So Stallone and director John Avildsen got creative. They filled the stands with friends, family, and even crew members dressed in different outfits to make the crowd look bigger. Stallone's father, Frank Stallone Sr., actually shows up in the film ringing the bell for the big fight. His brother, Frank Stallone Jr., pops up too in a small part. That family-first, scrappy approach matched the film's underdog spirit. Instead of Hollywood spectacle, Rocky leaned on grit and resourcefulness. When the crowd chants, "Rocky! Rocky!" it's not just extras, it's people close to Stallone, rooting for the film just as much as the character. And somehow that gave the finale its authentic, rough-edged energy. Bonus fact, Stallone's real gym gear made it on screen. Most of Rocky's training gear wasn't just movie props, it was Stallone's actual equipment. The punching bags, weights, even some of the benches were the ones he used while getting ready for the role. That made the training scenes feel real. Every drop of sweat, every sloppy lift, and every improvised move came straight from Stallone's own effort. Using his real gym stuff gave the movie an extra layer of authenticity, making Rocky's grind feel lived in. Even small details, like a worn-out bench, helped tell the story of a guy working hard to make his dreams happen. That's Rocky, a film that started as one man's desperate gamble and ended up rewriting movie history. From guerrilla shoots to family cameos, from real punches to real pets, every frame was built on heart. It didn't just launch a franchise, it gave the world a blueprint for the underdog dream. So what's your favorite Rocky moment? Drop it in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit subscribe for more wild movie facts, because sometimes the best stories happen outside the ring.
Wow, that was weird.